Roman Reigns helped Jey Uso beat Oba Femi at Night of Champions, and the errand boy question just got a lot more complicated. Jey Uso did not beat Oba Femi, not on his own, not through the specific, hard-won competitive achievement that the main event's redemption arc was supposed to be rebuilding towards. He beat him with Roman Reigns' help, at Night of Champions, against the most dominant rising force in the post-WrestleMania landscape, the ruler who military pressed the tribal chief over the top rope, who dropped a microphone on 4 words, who has been declaring SummerSlam his championship destination since the moment Brock Lesnar's boots hit the canvas at WrestleMania 42. And the tribal chief's intervention is the only reason Jey Uso is walking out of Night of Champions with a win over that man on his record. Seth Rollins asked the question on Raw in Paris. Nothing more than Roman Reigns' errand boy. Jey could not answer it then. He sent Jacob Fatu to handle the confrontation rather than engaging with the substance of the accusation. Jimmy Uso has spent weeks watching his brother drift further from the authentic, crowd-connected main event whose redemption arc made him one of the most beloved figures in the current landscape, replaced by someone who mocks critics on Instagram and avoids accountability and surrounds himself with people who do not push back. Night of Champions just gave Jey Uso the loudest possible answer to the errand boy question, and the answer is not the one his brother was hoping for. Welcome to Wrestling Stands, and this result is going to be discussed for a long time. Quick favor before we get into it, if you enjoy this kind of content, please smash that like button and hit subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. It's totally free for you, but it means the world to us and helps the channel grow. Already subscribed? You are absolutely brilliant, thank you so much. Right then, let's get into it. Let us start with why this match existed on the Night of Champions card at all. Because Jey Uso vs Oba Femi is not the championship-level collision that the ruler's competitive trajectory has been pointing towards. That match is Roman vs Femi, and it is supposed to happen at SummerSlam, with the military press and the dropped microphone and every confrontation since providing its foundation. Jey stepping into that specific competitive space, taking a singles match against the man who is supposed to be the summer's defining championship threat, is itself the most revealing piece of information about where the King of the Ring momentum and the post-LA Night controversy have positioned the main event. Jey has been advancing, Jey has been winning, and Jey, surrounded by the validation that those wins provide and increasingly insulated from the honest feedback that Jimmy has been trying to deliver, apparently believed that Oba Femi was a credential within reach. It was not on his own merits, and Night of Champions proved it in the most direct possible way. The interference itself is the detail that determines everything about how this result should be read, because a clean Jey Uso victory over Oba Femi, however unlikely given the competitive gap between them, would have been the kind of validating, transformation-accelerating result that the video on Jey's recent drift warned us to watch for. Success silencing legitimate feedback. The Instagram mockery justified by the record. Roman's help removes that reading entirely and replaces it with something considerably more uncomfortable for Jey specifically, because every person watching Night of Champions now knows what Jey himself has to know, on some level, underneath whatever Instagram bravado the post-match celebration produces. He did not beat Oba Femi. Roman Reigns did. Jey was the instrument through which the tribal chief's interference produced a result with Jey's name attached to it. That is the literal, textbook definition of an errand boy victory. Seth Rollins asked the question in Paris and Jey sent Fatu rather than answering it. Night of Champions answered it for him, in the most public and the most competitively unambiguous way available, with the tribal chief's interference doing the work that Jey's own competitive capability could not do against a man of Oba Femi's caliber. What this means for Oba Femi's SummerSlam positioning is the most immediately significant championship picture consequence of the result. Because Femi did not lose to Jey Uso on competitive merit, he lost to Roman Reigns' interference wearing Jey Uso's name, and that distinction is not lost on the ruler, who has spent the entire post-WrestleMania period building his case against Roman specifically around the argument that the tribal chief cannot be isolated from his table, that every meaningful victory Roman's championship has produced has been augmented by institutional support that an honest, one-on-one assessment of competitive ability would not require. Roman interfering in a match to help Jey Uso beat Oba Femi is the single most direct piece of supporting evidence for that exact argument heading into SummerSlam. Femi walks away from Night of Champions not diminished by a legitimate loss but with the most powerful possible confirmation that the man he is chasing the championship from will use every available resource, including sacrificing the dignity of his own faction members' competitive credibility, to protect his interests. The ruler's SummerSlam case just got stronger, not weaker. Jimmy Uso watching this is the most personally devastating individual consequence the result produces, because everything Jimmy has feared about his brother's transformation, the proximity to Roman's authority, the validation from people who do not push back, the erosion of the authentic competitive identity that made Jey the main event, just received its most concrete possible confirmation. Jey did not need Roman's help. Jey wanted to believe he did not need it, and accepted it anyway, and is presumably going to celebrate the win as though the interference did not happen. That is the Hollywood Hogan trajectory in its most literal possible expression, accepting a victory whose foundation is compromised because the validation feels better than the honest accounting of how it was actually achieved. Whether Jimmy says anything, whether the brother who has been the grounding presence finally reaches the point where silence is no longer the available response. That is the most important individual storyline thread that Night of Champions Jey and Femi result has produced for the weeks ahead. Roman's calculation in choosing to interfere is the most interesting question from the tribal chief's own competitive and political perspective, because Roman Reigns does not act without reason, and helping Jey Uso beat Oba Femi specifically, rather than simply letting his faction member absorb a competitive loss to a man widely expected to beat him, required a decision that the tribal chief made with full knowledge of what it would communicate. Perhaps it is the simplest possible explanation: family protection, deployed in the most literal sense, regardless of the cost to Jey's individual credibility or the gift it hands Femi's SummerSlam case. Roman protecting Jey the way he has protected every first family member whose competitive standing serves the dynasty's broader interests. Perhaps it is something colder, a deliberate, calculated decision to weaken Oba Femi's confidence heading into SummerSlam, denying him a clean victory over anyone connected to the first family, even at the cost of exposing Jey's competitive limitations to the entire WWE universe. Roman sacrificing his cousin's dignity as a strategic asset in the championship chess match against the man he will face at the summer's biggest show. Either way, the cost lands on Jey, and the most significant question the result leaves behind is whether the main event understands that, or whether the celebration in the aftermath suggests he does not. Night of Champions just gave us a result that matters far beyond its immediate place on the card. Jey Uso beat Oba Femi with Roman Reigns' help. The errand boy question has its answer. Oba Femi's SummerSlam case against the tribal chief just got stronger, and Jimmy Uso is watching his brother accept a victory that confirms every fear he has been carrying. Whether Jey ever reckons with what actually happened in that ring is the question that will define the next chapter of his story. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you in the next one.